Hey there, this is the Marathon Handbook podcast. My name is Michael Doyle, and I'm joined by my teammate, Katelyn Tocci, our managing editor. Katelyn, we've got a packed show today. We're going to cover three topics. We're going to chat about the controversy that's been unfolding for the last couple of months at the Parkrun. That's that global network of free 5Ks that happen in something like 22 countries around the world. We'll unpack that one. We're also going to talk about the London Marathon and how crazy popular it is. The lottery just, I guess you would say, sold out or maxed out on almost 1 million people.
Totally maxed out.
Yeah,
I missed my opportunity. We'll get to that later.
We'll unpack that. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the state of marathoning and whether or not this is a good thing. And then the final topic for today. This is going to be a fun one. Katelyn, you're running a marathon this weekend. Not to amp up the pressure or create too much pre-race anxiety, but I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to walk through your pre-race routine, your prep, how you go into race week, tapering, kind of like a toolkit for how to execute marathon week. And I'll show you my points of view as well and what I do as well. So that'll be fun.
Let's compare notes.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to that one. Yep. But first, we've got something that I like to call running trivia, mainly because I couldn't come up with a better name. We'll workshop
we'll work
that
on
one.
that. We'll work on that.
Yeah. We'll develop the name for this one. But each week I thought I would torture Katelyn and our other co-hosts who will be joining us in upcoming episodes and ask one random, weird, running or running adjacent trivia question. And what we'll do is I'll ask it. No cheating, no Googling, no ChatGPT in the background. And then we'll circle back later on in the show with the answer, and you can tell me whether or not you got it right or not. So
okay, sounds good.
Drum roll. I'll just insert a drum roll sound effect here. Yeah. And okay, the question is, when was the last time someone won a major marathon wearing a jacket?
I think I know this one.
Oh, awesome. Yes, the eyes lit up.
I was so worried, but you know what? I think I do.
Yeah. So it's kind of like peek behind the curtain here. Katelyn and I pre-show were talking about this trivia concept, and I don't think you were super thrilled about it.
Nope.
And I told you this was not going to be nerdy running stats or necessarily like kind of like dyed-in-the-wool running history. Although this one kind of is that, but like as a little hint to our listeners and viewers on the video pod aspect of this, this one, if you follow American running, you probably have a good idea of what the answer of this one is. So that's two. I've already given up. I've given away too much.
I feel better already.
There you go. You're feeling confident. So one thing I wanted to chat about, Katelyn, before we jump into today's main topics is this whirlwind tour that I experienced that I had never gone through before, covering running in 10 plus years. But I've, heard of others doing in the industry, which is the back-to-back 6-day compressed experience of the Boston Marathon followed by the London Marathon, because of course Boston's on a Monday and then London is on the following Sunday. So our teammate Alex here and myself were both in Boston. We did like crazy coverage for 4 days in Boston, running around, and then the following day when I got back to Toronto where I live, flew to London the following day, which got me thinking in retrospect, looking at all the performances in Boston and London, the elite performances aside, one performance, or maybe two, we can call it, stick out to me, which is ex-NHL hockey great Zdeno Chara ran Boston and London back to back.
Bruins, right? Boston.
Yes, he was the Bruins great. And I think one of the biggest, or like literally biggest, like tallest hockey players in professional hockey history at 6'9", and now he's turned into this dyed-in-the-wool runner. And he did them both back to back. And I remember hearing about, okay, he did Boston last year. He's clearly super into it. Like he's gone like full running and triathlon.
He's taking it on full force. Okay.
Yeah. And he's like leaned right down and he's really into it. And he runs Boston. He does quite well. Like he runs like, what was it?
3:30 something.
3:30:52. And thinking to myself, like, guy's 47 years old. That's really good.
Great
3:30.
Time. Great time.
Especially for like kind of celebrity runner, right? Like usually I know he's an ex-professional athlete, but
True.
Not an endurance sports athlete, more of a power skill team sports guy.
Yeah, hockey is definitely a sport where you need a lot of power to jump in and out, but I think he had the endurance there from playing hockey as well. So that helps him a little bit for the marathon.
Yeah. And clearly because he runs a 3:30, but here's the kicker. The dude flies to London and then 6 days later he pumps out 3:11:04. At 47.
You wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And he's like 1.5 times my size. So, and I'm not a small human being. So I'm like deeply impressed by it. Clearly he's extremely passionate about running. I'd love to like find out about his training routine. I'd love to find out how many miles he was doing. Like what his workouts were like, how many long runs, that sort of thing. Cause like,
that would be a very interesting interview.
Yeah. We're at little peek behind the curtain here. We're trying to set that up.
I mean, I love it. And it's incredibly impressive, but like to all of my athletes out there, please do not run 2 marathons in 6 days. Like this is exactly what I try to have them avoid with the recovery time. I mean, it's so impressive what he did, the times, whittling it down by 20 minutes for the next marathon. But if you're listening, please, athletes of mine.
Yeah, I know. It's like
2 marathons in 1 week in 6 days.
Yeah, this is a great performance, and it's something that we're both deeply impressed by. But at the same time, this is just like a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea 99.9% of the time.
Thanks, Michael. My phone's going to be ringing off the hook like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Can I do both next year?
Yeah. All right. So let's take a quick break and then let's just jump right into the first topic.
Sounds great.
All right. And we're back. Topic number 1, we'll just jump right into it. This Parkrun controversy that's been ongoing. Our colleague, Jesse Carveth, who is our senior editor and does a lot of the news coverage for us, has been following this one pretty closely. Yep. We've written several stories on it. Basically, let's unpack it here because it's sort of coming to an impasse right now, and it's a pretty interesting subject, I would say. And I think kind of flicks at a slew of issues in the running community that I think are perhaps poorly understood or in debate right now that we can chat about a little bit here by taking a closer look at this story. So, Parkrun. Katelyn, what's your relationship with Parkrun? Have you ever run a Parkrun event before? Have you ever encountered Parkrun? Like, I know you're in Costa Rica, but you're an American. So like, have you ever done a Parkrun 5K?
I haven't participated in Parkrun. I learned about it from reading our articles that Jesse had put together. And I think Amber had written one a while back. And it seems like a great event, but I looked them up immediately and I went to the map to see if there were any near me in Costa Rica, and I couldn't find any close. I think the closest one was Texas when I looked it up. So
it's a bit of a hike.
It was a bit of a hike. So no, I mean I've learned a lot about it, but I haven't had the opportunity to run one yet. Yeah.
So the Parkrun, sort of a little quick Wikipedia, so you don't have to is like it's a timed, or at least it used to be a timed 5K time trial type run, hosted in a public park every Saturday Started in the UK in 2004 with like I think it was 13 runners and five
Yep.
volunteers, and then grew to this pretty big juggernaut, particularly in the United Kingdom. Although it is in 22 countries around the world. I'm Canadian. I'm in Toronto. I think there may still be a park run in Toronto on a regular basis, but there's a few of them around Canada. It hasn't really quite taken hold in Canada or the US the way it has in parts of Europe. But it's still, I'd say, probably the single biggest running franchise in the world. I mean, today their site says they've got 9 million
Yeah, 9
registered
million
park runners.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that dwarfs any other like New York Roadrunners events, anything like that for sure. So they were kind of like doing their thing for the last 19 years. And I chatted with a couple of Brits because I wanted to get kind of an inside track on what the park run means to them. And the reaction was, for the most part, and this might just because I was speaking with kind of serious recreational runners, that they would use it as a Saturday, like a time trial. Like if they needed to test their fitness or they wanted to do kind of like a bit of an organized workout or like a pre-race prep run.
Yeah,
they
or it's a
would
great way to do a quick test, like a quick 5K test.
Yeah.
You want to get your best time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they jump in for that, and it was and it was timed, and it was recorded. It was timed, measured, recorded. Great.
Yep.
So that was sort of how it had been used for the last number of years. And I think what's happened in the last few years, particularly since the pandemic, when all events, even charity type events like Parkrun, they got rocked by participation lag or having to shut down for a while during COVID. And then I think seems like numbers, finances, big influx of donation money, but that donation money comes with kind of like pointing you in a certain direction as an organization. Anyway, in February of this year, there's a bunch of issues that came to a head, and they suddenly pulled all their stats, all their record keeping, all of their leaderboards, all of the all-time fastest performances, the park run records, which were a big part of this event. This
Thing like
kind
the
of,
age groups, the age category records, and that sort of thing as well. Top 500, sub 17 minutes, sub 20 minutes. They had a lot of information out there and a lot of info recorded. And I think there were a lot of devastated runners to see their information go poof.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened in February. It caused a big stir. We wrote a story about it.
Yep.
The CEO and the founder, two different people, sort of the brain trust of Parkrun, which is a registered charity in the UK, responded basically by saying that they're kind of moving in a different direction. And then there was this Bring Back the Stats group of people who are runners who were, committed park runners and also volunteers as well. In some cases, those who put together park runs over the years. And I think they felt like they had the carpet pulled from underneath their feet, so to speak.
Surprise.
And they were pretty upset about it. And they've been sort of fighting back. They've been various protests at parkrun events. They've had meetings, sit-downs with the parkrun organizers. And the latest is a back and forth that they had where basically Parkrun slammed the door in their face.
Yeah, I think they had a petition, about 26,000 signatures or so at last check, begging for the stats back. And they pretty much got shut down recently.
Yeah. And we should say that there's a pretty complicated social dimension with this, where in February, at the onset of this, there was some criticism that Parkrun was not honoring transgender runners who were participating in the events and setting records and not managing those performances in an acceptable manner. And there was a lot of, I think, a lot of infighting that had gone on. And that was pointed to as an element that may have motivated Parkrun to pull stats and dealing with any of this sort of like genderized stats and that sort of thing, which is a pretty complicated issue, obviously. And we're not going to unpack that in great detail here today. But I will say that I think other organizations, big running events, I look at, like, say, for example, the New York Roadrunners, who host and own the New York City Marathon. I think they've done a really good job at managing this issue where they've created a non-binary category. They have qualifying times for the New York City Marathon, so they have created qualifying times for that category. They've created a leaderboard on race day, as well as results. And, you know, you get to choose, right? Like where you slot in with things. So I think that that's empowering and an intelligent way to approach it. And it kind of baffles me that if this was a factor for Parkrun, that they wouldn't have just adopted that sort of approach. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. They have decided to pull all stats. And what's interesting that Jesse reported this week is that Parkrun's basically like doubling down. They're now saying to these people who want the stats back and the competitive element of the series back, they're saying like, kind of like, no, we haven't even finished going as far as we plan on going with this.
Right.
We're
With their 5-year plan or something.
That's
like that.
right.
And they're almost slamming the door in their faces because they said, there was a quote where they were basically saying, well, don't worry, go find another race. If you don't like our new rules, we'll have another 100 runners take over for you.
That's right. Yeah, that was like a pretty brutal one. That's like the founder of Parkrun said basically like something along the lines of, I'm just trying to find the quote here. It's like absolutely brutal. It was basically along the lines of like, hold on, I've got it right here. Here it is. For each of the disgruntled participants, whether they are a runner, walker, or a run director, if they leave, Parkrun will be another 100. There will be another 100 runners to take their place. That's the Parkrun founder Simon Sinton Hewitt in a statement to the people who want the stats and competitive element of the Parkrun brought back. That's
I found that was a little harsh, but and I mean I can understand what they're stating, because they are saying that they're trying to stick to their roots and they're trying to stick to the idea of running for fun and making walkers and non-runners and joggers and competitive runners and recreational runners and everyone feel like they have a place in Parkrun, and they want it to feel friendly and they don't want it to feel competitive. And I can understand that. I can understand that that's a great motto to have. That's a great aim to get everybody running and maybe non-runners running or walking or jogging or however you want to participate. In the runs, from the photos and everything I've seen, all the information, they look so great and so welcoming just as they are. And so to have the stats for so many years and then decide to just take them out because that's their goal, I feel as though they were reaching their goal, because it really looks like it is a very, very friendly and open event to everyone who participates or anyone who wants to participate.
Yeah, so I had an email back and forth, kind of on background, with one of the Bring Back the Stats lobbyists, and I was curious about kind of the sense of direction Parkrun was taking from the perspective of this group of people. And the reaction was that even though Parkrun is a quote-unquote charity, it's really being run like a corporation. It's being run like a big business. Apparently it has something like along the lines of 50-ish employees at this point.
Oh, great.
They've taken on a huge influx of cash, mostly from government, from UK government donation, not donations, but like there's no such thing as free money, from support, exactly.
Yeah.
And their organization has sort of been energized by a huge amount of money coming in, but they're also spending a huge amount of money as well. And I imagine there's some strings to that. You know, I imagine there's some expectation that there will be continued growth. And if you're an organization that has been around for almost 20 years, and you've hit your ceiling with the kind of dyed-in-the-wool running nerd, it's really tough to grow from there, right? You may even have probably seen your organization and your numbers shrinking. I mean, I don't know if they make those numbers public or not. We haven't seen any public numbers, but I imagine that their challenge is to try to grow. They have corporate relationships. They have brand sponsorships. They've done stuff with brands like Brooks in the past. And there's got to be expectations in terms of like deliverables. It's a company effectively, right? So
absolutely. I think, I mean, and I love the idea and everything behind it. And I feel like, yeah, if they want to grow, maybe they could have done it another way. I mean, maybe this is a way that's going to invite more people, but I think there are other ways to promote the friendliness and the inclusiveness of the runs, maybe without taking away the stats. But who knows if that was something that they were asked to do to make that big change, and that this change or that this statement will actually entice more people to run, and maybe the people that they'll end up losing, who are really interested in those stats, is a small percentage when looking at the whole pie.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's always a mistake to turn your back on your core. And I've seen this happen time and time again over the last however many years in the running industry. This happens with brands often, where they get intoxicated by this idea of this imaginary kind of would-be runner that creates this incredible statistical line item where it's like X million people have run or say they ran in a survey 5 times in the last 12 months. So we categorize them as a would-be or sometimes runner. And then when you look at that massive statistic and you start doing the math on it, I mean, just greed takes over, right? It's like, how do we get that, like those millions of people to come and participate in our event? The answer is you aren't going to, because that's the most fickle consumer. That's effectively a non-runner. And like, I am all for trying to bring running to as many people as possible.
Yep.
And I think that in many respects that Parkrun's doing really great work. And I'm not against them going in this direction. It's sort of it's their corporation, it's their business, it's their charity. They can do as they wish with it. I just think it's kind of dangerous when you completely turn your back on your foundation. You lose your soul, you lose your identity, right?
And I agree with you as well. I mean, that's been their core. There are runners in there who look forward to that, who look forward to trying to break their own records, who look forward to maybe moving up in the stats a little bit in their age group or whatnot. But my running club here in Costa Rica, our motto has always been run for fun. And so from the very beginning, 10 years ago, we've been trying to get non-runners. It was more like runners come to the trail running community. And so that sort of like getting new people into a new sport. In my case, at first, it was getting women on the trails, because back then there weren't as many women running trail in Costa Rica. Now there are a ton. And so, I do love the idea. So it's just kind of making sure you move in the right direction, but also not completely turning your back on your core and keeping everyone involved and excited about it.
Yeah. You mean to tell me the motto of your running club isn't run for some arbitrary time? Because that's what everybody else gets caught up in all the time, right? Myself included.
And no, I mean, there are plenty of runners in the club who, of course, want their times, and everyone's working on PRs and getting better and better. But the whole idea, and I think it's a whole other topic, but the whole trail running community in general is kind of a more laid back group. So, run for fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so I think one thing that jumped out at me in thinking about this whole subject was, I think there's a bit of a disconnect here when you're a volunteer and every week, every Saturday, you're showing up first thing in the morning, you're setting up the cones, you're getting the watches ready, you're getting the timing is all getting set up, and you're pouring your life into it, and it becomes a big part of your identity. And as you and I both know, it's like running is all about identity, right? And for these volunteers, like basically if you're the local park run person, that's a big part of who you are. But then
And
when
you
it ends
take
up,
ownership of that work. I mean,
Totally.
you totally own that park run.
but the problem is you don't own the park run.
Right.
Park run owns the park run.
That's the
You,
irony.
yes, and I think that's a really tough realization when, in the classic corporate speak, they're going to go a different direction on this one, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the other weird thing that comes to mind is, so one of the details that has emerged in all this is who owns the stats, because there are all these stats, leaderboards, and so on. And if you go on the Parkrun site, they're gone. I figured out what the URL was, and I entered it in, and it gives me the 404 error message.
Okay, the error. Yep.
Then I went into the Wayback Machine, which you can kind of look at previous iterations of the site that have been cached over the years. And I did a little classic journalism trick. I just went in and went back to like December before this controversy spun up, and tried to look at the stats, and was able to see some of them. However, the Parkrun site sensed that I was trying to look at data in a weird way, and actually gave me an error saying that I was trying to scrape the data, and that's like not allowed because this is Parkrun copyright information.
Right.
And I was like, oh, right, of course.
Private property.
Yeah, you don't own your stats. You don't own that time you just put down at a major marathon or a park run. Parkrun owns that information, I guess. And who owns the data is a really interesting question. Got me thinking. And my understanding is Parkrun's not willing to turn that data over to this group of people that desperately want it. So
they want their stats.
Yeah. So I think they're at an impasse. I did ask this passionate individual that was involved in trying to lobby to bring the stats and the competitive element back to Parkrun, if there was anything kind of rising from the ashes of this to replace the idea of what Parkrun used to be. And, he said that it's still too early to tell, but that there's definitely an opportunity for that. So I'd be curious to see if there's kind of like a Parkrun 2.0 that emerges out of this.
Yeah, because I think I had seen that they were still going to send you your result, and that you may still get the age group result information, but to an email and not public. I'm not sure exactly what they've decided on, but maybe it's a possibility to get some. But again, that it wouldn't be public. You would be getting it, sent to your email, so it wouldn't be something that people could access, but you would be able to see it.
What's your take on that? I'm kind of curious. Like, I have mixed feelings about the public nature of results. It was just a kind of a foregone conclusion that if you ran in a race, it was going to show up on long ago, it would just show up on a big piece of paper, stuck to the side of a timing vehicle at the end of the race or whatever.
Right.
But then with the internet, with the obviously, like, this is aging both of us, but like with the advent of the internet, that all went online, and now it's like you can go and search for results going back 10 or 15 years in a lot of races.
Yeah.
What's your feeling about like the public nature of race results? Like, are you cool with your name and time being out there in the world?
I kind of feel like if I sign up for a race, if I'm signing up for that and I'm doing something in a group setting with a ton of other competitors, I expect that my information will be public, because I'm kind of signing almost a waiver to that by signing up for the race. I feel like if I'm signing up for the race, if I'm ready to run it, I'm ready to compete or ready to participate, that everyone else is going to be able to see to see my stats, and that I'm signing away the permission to keep that private. And I have no problem with that, because if I'm running a public event, I don't mind that my information would be out there. But funny that we're talking about this, because I also didn't realize that when I sign some of these waivers before races, and races that I've really wanted to do, that you're also, be careful everyone, you're also signing away your image in most cases, because I've run some great trail races and have gotten some great photos from some amazing photographers. And then I realized, and I've seen later down the road, my photo as a backdrop of a race website, or or even once just randomly looking up some, like literally Google images, and I was looking up some great running quotes, and I saw a photo of myself running in 80K here in Costa Rica, and I saw this big, it was a great running quote. I forget what it was wonderful though, with this big running quote next to it, and my face plastered on the on the running quote. So I said, okay, well, I should be fine with this because I probably signed a waiver that said the photographers can use my image and that they're public domain.
It wasn't your running. It was like a running quote from somebody else. It was like some classic running quote.
It was just a classic running quote. I was looking something up for my running club. We were having an event, and I was looking for some great running quotes and like trying to get inspired. And I said, hey, that's me.
You inspired yourself. Yeah, that's.
How did I get there?
That's eerie. That's actually quite creepy.
It was creepy. Yeah.
It brings to mind, like, I have a similar experience. It wasn't me, thankfully, because I'd be horrified by it. But my closest running pal and training partner, we ran Chicago in 2022, and he's a very kind of quiet, low-key, private person. I don't think he's on social media. Never makes a big deal out of his times or his performances. He's a very good runner. And he's also not somebody who's going to be like, shedding a tear of joy at a finish line either. He's a very internal person.
Okay. A little stoic.
Very stoic. He
very
is
stoic.
like,
Okay.
yeah, you look up like, I'm blanking now. The stoic guy, Meditations, or Marcus Aurelius. You look up Marcus Aurelius and it's like my friend Ross's face, chiseled in stone. But so I guess he crosses the finish line in Chicago, and for like a half second, he has this euphoric smile on his face, and he's like looking to the heavens as he's doing it. And I guess a photographer with a big telephoto lens spotted it and took a photo, one of the race photographers.
Snatched it up.
The following year, when the world record is run in Chicago, there's a shot of Kelvin Kiptoon running towards the finish line in the finishing chute, ready, almost like about to break the world record. And then one of the giant, like 10-foot banners on one of the flagpoles right over this guy's head is my friend Ross making this like angelic face.
He must
of
have
euphoria.
lost it. Oh my gosh.
It was incredible. I screenshotted it as I was watching I was live streaming the race, and then immediately sent it to our group chat, and it was like it was amazing.
He was probably I would have been psyched. He probably did not feel the same way.
He was not enthusiastic. So word to the wise, read the fine print, be aware that even if you do pay, say, $200 and change for your major marathon entry fee, you're still signing those name and image rights over to them for marketing purposes. And
so smile when you see a photographer. Be ready.
Yeah, and don't do the like stop your watch at the finish line thing, or maybe do that. Then they won't use your photo, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I think. To kind of like to tie this in a bow, I think one thing to keep in mind, or two things to keep in mind with situations like this parkrun situation is, one, when you're volunteering for an event, it's still not your event, and charities are companies. And then two, there's no such thing like in we've learned with social media the hard way. If it's quote unquote free, that means you're the product. Right. That's the tough lesson
of the
we've
story.
learned. Yes.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a free race. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a break, and then we'll jump right into talking about London.
All right. Great.
All right, and we're back, and let's just jump right into the second topic today. Katelyn, this week, the London Marathon, which just wrapped up, they turn around, they strike while the iron is hot. They know that interest is at a fever pitch. They've got their entry lottery. Okay, so they open the lottery. London's a tough race to get into. There's a lot of demand, clearly, and they create this lottery where they allow a certain number of runners to get an entry through putting their name in. They got 840,318.
Yep, to be
entries.
exact. Yep.
Yeah. That's way up from the previous record, which was like almost 600,000.
Almost 600,000. Yeah. I mean, it's just record breaking. I mean, you're talking almost 1 million people, and I'm not one of those people.
No.
I slept on it and I missed the deadline. It could have been 840,319. You did too?
I did too.
I
forgot to.
We talked
try
about
to
this.
enter.
We wanted to run. Okay.
And I just came away from watching the London Marathon live and in person at the finish line, and I was completely and totally floored by the experience. I was deeply impressed by it, and I have to admit, I went in pretty ambivalent. I was kind of like, what's so special about London? And I've done New York, I've done Boston, I've done it's sort of like, I thought it was like the English version of Chicago. Flat, fast race, world record breaking performances. You see some cool sights in the city, but like ultimately you're going to kind of get the big race experience, but nothing sort of like unique about its character.
It surpassed your expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I suspect it might be the best marathon in the world.
Wow.
And that's saying a lot, considering I think very highly of New York as an experience as well.
Okay.
So I get why there's such high demand for it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I watched it on TV and I want to run it. I mean, on TV, I mean, that can't compare whatsoever. I was one of those watching every second on TV, and I was like, wow, this looks amazing. I would love to do that. I'd love to run past the Palace. I would love to see I would love to do it all. It looked like everyone was just having a blast out there.
Yeah. It's an interesting little statistical line here. Like, I'll just break it down a little bit further. We'll nerd out for a second here. So the race, and what's kind of unusual about this race is it's still a very UK-centric race. For being one of the world marathon majors, and this race with a huge amount of interest and intrigue, and London being like a big world-class international city, it's still like mostly just like a British runner race. So like of the entrants, there was like 672,000 were Brits in the lottery, and then pretty even spread between men and women entrants, which was great. Always nice to see. And outside of the UK was 167,000 entrants. So that's still shocked. A crazy number of people.
Yeah, it is, but I was shocked to see that it seemed like there was such a few amount of people from outside of the UK who were trying to get into that lottery. But I guess it still is a ton of people. But when you compare it, it seems like such a minuscule amount.
Yeah, I know. It's tiny. So I imagine next year's London Marathon is going to be record breaking yet again. London this year was, I think they announced at the finish line, it was just a bit over 54,000 runners, which to my knowledge would make it the second biggest marathon in the world by entrants.
Next to New York?
Perhaps. Yeah, next to New York.
Mm-hmm.
New York is just like always around 55,000. I imagine London will probably, I don't know, these races always have to consider like how many people they can actually accommodate at especially the start lines and finishing areas.
I wonder what the cap will be next year, if they'll keep it around the same. And I don't know, but I do know that when I was digging into this data as well, because I wanted to check out more information on the lottery again that I missed. And when I saw that just for the public ballots, there were only 17,000 spots, I was like, well, wow, that's discouraging. And I know that there are other ways to kind of up your chances, but 17,000 public ballot spots, I thought, wow, that's hard to get in. It's tricky.
Yeah. So let's talk really briefly about how you get in if you didn't get a lottery spot, which is most of us
right, of course.
didn't get, or in our case, we were just, didn't get our act together to enter at all.
It's our fault.
But for the unlucky 800 and however many thousand people who did not get in.
Yep.
So I've gone deep down the rabbit hole on this. My wife ran London this year, and she actually
she did.
She entered the lottery a few times in the last few years, and obviously didn't get in any time, and kind of gave up hope that was ever going to work out for her. So she looked into other avenues, or rather, I I helped her look into other avenues, did some research.
Okay.
And this was actually a good exercise for me from a professional standpoint, so that we kind of know how you get into these various races. Like,
Yep.
particularly from a North American standpoint, it's a bit opaque how you get into a London or a Tokyo. Berlin is a little bit more straightforward, I've found, but London is a tricky one. So basically the way you get into London is through the lottery,
Yep.
through club entries in the UK. So if
Right,
you're
okay.
a British national and you run for a club or have some club affiliation, a lot of these clubs get a whole bunch of entries, and basically you can grab one of these entries. You have to pay for it, of course, but
Right.
they hold these entries, which is,
Okay.
I think, a really great system to kind of keep the club system in the UK alive.
Yep.
And then if you're outside of the UK, you're not a UK resident, you're trying to get into this race, basically there's like only two avenues to enter, which is one, you raise money for a charity and you
Yep.
basically buy a charity bib.
It's like $2,500, right? That you have to raise or something along those lines?
Around 2,500
Yeah.
either pounds or
Oh,
US
right.
dollars.
Sorry.
It's one or the other. If
Yeah.
it's pounds, it's even more. It's
Yeah.
a lot. It's a few
It's a lot.
$1,000s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And basically what you do is you find an affiliated charity, which the tricky thing is it's going to be in a UK charity. So you're not necessarily raising money for a charity that is directly probably touching you or your life within the country you're from if you're not a UK citizen. But you just try to maybe match up with a charity you believe in
Yep.
yourself. And then you got to figure out a way to raise that money. And if you don't raise that money, they have your credit card and they just
They just take the rest.
they just take it off the top at the end. That's right. So
Okay.
you've basically paid $3,000 for a
Right.
bib. The only other option that I can find, there's two other options. One's really tricky, but the only other basic option for most people is going through like a tour operator.
Yep.
So there's, we've all kind of seen these tour operators at running expos over the years, or back in the day, used to be like in the back pages of like a running magazine, and you see like like banner ads on sites for them, like the marathon tours type. I think actually one of them's called Marathon Tours, and they operate in different countries, and they basically offer a tour package. They buy a bib from the London Marathon for however much money, a huge premium, and then they turn around and they sell it as a package to suckers like you and I.
What, with like hotel and all that stuff included?
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
They usually roll in a couple of days at a travel lodge or something like that. And there's usually like tiers. Like there's like the lo-fi for a few $1,000, and then there's the slightly higher tier, kind of like nicer business hotel in the heart of the city for more. Not a cheap way to go.
I was going to say, there seem like there are options, but they're pricey options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One scandalous thing that I encountered when I was doing this research is they all advertise that they take care of free transport to the start line on race morning.
Okay.
And then you read the fine print, and the free transport is taking the tube, so taking the subway. And the subway on race morning for anyone wearing a bib
is free. Isn't
Love
that
it.
nice? They throw that in there.
it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the free add-on of the free thing. Yeah, very clever. Anyway, so those are the two sort of most straightforward ways. And then there's a third way, which is not for everybody, unfortunately, and that is Abbott, which is the company that sponsors the World Marathon Majors, of which London is one. They do a lot of this sort of age category world championship stuff, and they have like a whole leaderboard and so on and so forth,
and different in cutoff times and all of that, like almost
and you can they have a lottery to gain entry into these majors. It's a sort of like I think probably a much more statistically favorable lottery, but you have to hit certain
you've got to get
times
a qualifying time. Yeah. I saw those
So
times too somewhere. And there was like a professional qualifying time as well. That was really tough. Wow. That's another level. Yeah.
That's a whole other level. Exactly. Yeah.
There are many ways. It's just figuring out which one will work for us.
I've heard of even like Olympic hopefuls in Olympic years being told like your time's not quite good enough. We'll see. Like people who've run like 2:30 for a woman running 2:30 and they're basically like, yeah, you're on the outside looking in and we're not sure if we're going to have an elite spot for you. So the demand is extremely high to get into London.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So one last thing that this line of thinking led me down, which is that, okay, the major marathons are clearly healthy. They're doing pretty well.
Yep.
And even a lot of big city races seem to be doing pretty well. You're hearing about bigger cities, marathons in particular, are selling out in the last couple of years. It's a great sign. It's a great direction, particularly, after 2020, 2021, it was kind of like a lot of races died, right? However, smaller races, as our colleague Jesse reported a couple months ago, smaller and even medium, mid-sized races are still suffering, and like the numbers are down. They're struggling to lure in new runners, whereas these new runners are super interested in New York and London. So like the Gen Z kids are like, the youngs want to run the big race. They want the big IG moment. They want the TikTok. They want that experience. They want the Palace finish line. They want the mall.
Yep.
But, the like local 5K, not so much, right? Yeah. So that's tricky. I don't know how you fix that, because I think if the smaller races go away, there's a real problem with like the middle class of running events.
Yeah, we need those races. I mean, of course, people are looking at the exposure, the prestige. There's so many great blockbuster moments for these big marathons and why people want to run them. And of course, if you're a non-runner and you're looking at these, this is what you see. This is what you're exposed to. You're not going to be as exposed, to the smaller races and the more, townsy marathons and 5Ks and 10Ks. But I think, we need those races, especially if there are almost 1 million people trying to get into London and there are going to be 55,000. So where's everybody else going to go if they want to do a marathon? So we need those races, and those races are awesome because they have their own perks and a ton of perks that the big marathons don't have as well. I just think that, maybe they just don't get as much exposure as they need for this new generation to get involved.
Yeah, this kind of brings to mind what I would call like the sort of franchise blockbuster film industry issue as a comparison, where in the last few years we've seen kind of like the takeover of like the Marvel franchise and big blockbuster action films that play in like IMAX screens, but there are all these dramas, rom-coms, like they've all sort of disappeared from movie theaters, and the whole film industry is kind of a mess, right? And like the movie theaters are closing left and right, that sort of thing. It sort of feels like the same thing with running. However, the saving grace for the film and TV industry is that there's this whole like infrastructure of streaming now with like prestige TV, right? Yep. Where it's like, I think a lot of movies that were being made, say 20 years ago, are just being turned into like series now. And that's how we're consuming them. But there's no, I don't think, real alternative in running for there to be like, there's no like, well, I don't run my local 5K anymore, but instead I do this, you know? Although maybe, I don't know, you're a big in the ultra and trail scene. Maybe like the ultra trail scene is the prestige TV of running. I don't know if I'm sort of maybe extending this metaphor too far.
No, I mean, it does. It has, I mean, the growth in trail running over the past just 10 years has been so exponential, it's sort of like the up and coming. I mean, when we started our trail running club for that exact reason, because there were so few people involved in the races. I would go to a mountain marathon here and there would be, 3 women and, 10 men. And so, and now seeing the races are just here in Costa Rica as well. They're just absolutely packed to the gills. So it is something, take it that those races are also, maybe they're taking away a little bit from those because more road runners are also converting to trail runners, or they're doing a little bit of both, or taking a season to do each thing, because they're just loving the trail. I mean, it's become such a big addition to the running community.
Yeah. So on that, speaking of you running races, maybe not on the trail, on the road this time, we'll get into our final topic of the day. But before we do that, let's take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back with our running trivia answer.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back.
Let's do it.
All right, and we're back. Running trivia. This week's answer to the question, when was the last time someone won a major marathon wearing a jacket? Now, this is kind of a weird one because when you think about it, most often when someone breaks the tape in one of these 6 big marathons around the world that happen every year, they're wearing a singlet. Or at the very worst, like a t-shirt or a long sleeve if it's a super duper cold day, right? Wearing a jacket's actually super rare. In fact, I could only find one instance photographically in the last many, many years in any of the major marathons of someone wearing a jacket and breaking the tape in a major marathon. Katelyn, do you know the answer to our trivia question?
I think I do. And one of the reasons I think I do is because it's close to home, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because I'm from Boston. So originally from Boston. And I think that it was Des Linden in that rainy, cold, windy Boston Marathon.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it right.
I can't believe it. I can't believe you asked a question that I would actually know the answer to. I was
You're 1 for 1.
Stressing over this. I was completely stressing over the trivia, Michael.
Oh, no, you nailed it. 2018 Boston Marathon.
Yeah, Des.
Desiree Linden breaks the tape in a 2:39:54. So it was a slugfest of a day. Yeah. She's wearing that black and sort of neon green jacket. Yeah,
with her fist pumps as she's coming through she's breaking the tape. I loved it. What a great moment. Yeah.
Absolutely pissing rain, sideways wind. It was just a total disaster of a day.
Yep.
I did not run that event, but I had a bunch of training partners, a bunch of friends running it. They all unanimously said it was pretty horrible.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a very dramatic experience. Now, interestingly enough, the Yuki Kauchi, the Japanese runner who won the men's race, he was in a singlet with the arm sleeves. I misremembered. I in my mind put a jacket on him in my brain. So I was like, oh, both of them won in a jacket. But no, it was only Des Linden that was wearing a jacket, which I think was a really smart choice because clearly she didn't go hypothermic, at least not until the finish lines.
Right.
So there you go. That is the answer to our inaugural running trivia
awesome
question. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. On to topic 3. Speaking of choosing what to wear on race day, preparing for the big 26.2. So Katelyn, tell us a little bit about what you got going on this weekend.
All right. Well, I'm an ultra runner, just so you guys know, a trail runner at heart, and I decided to take on the White Mountains Marathon in New Hampshire. So I'm doing a road marathon. I've been training pretty darn hard the past 4 months and am nervous as can be, even though running 100Ks, 100 milers, 80Ks, the marathon to me is just such a hard event. I've only done 2 beforehand. It is just, I think, one of the most difficult events it's just so hard. The effort level that you run at, pounding the pavement. But I'm excited about it. But yeah, it's Sunday, 6 a.m. And I'm not thrilled about the forecast. It looks like about in the 40s and rain.
Oh boy.
I'm going to pull a Des. I'm going to be bringing a jacket.
I was going to say, pack the jacket. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about it here.
All right.
Okay, so Let's do like a little bit of like, let's stick to our namesake here. This is like this is a chapter, one of the end chapters of the Marathon Handbook, right? Is the pre-race prep
Yep.
by Katelyn Tocci. So taper, how long do you taper for?
Okay. I do a 3-week taper.
Oh, a long one. Okay.
Yeah. I do the 3-week taper. Or we probably have probably did a 34K longest long run, peak week long run. Jumped down to a 24K the following week, and this past weekend a 20K. So and during the week, kept the intensity up, pretty similarly to all the weeks. I'm one of those believers as well with the methods of keeping the intensity up and lowering the volume. And so still been doing plenty of some threshold stuff, some marathon pace stuff, but bringing down the volume little by little. Maybe by this past week, I've gone down about 30%, I'd say, to about a 70% since peak week.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's been good.
yeah, so that there's sort of like 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I've tried 10 days before. I've tried sort of like coming hard off the mountain and just like sliding right into the marathon.
And how did you do on that one?
That actually worked out okay.
Okay.
I've, in the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, gone back to doing a 2-week taper. I just find most comfortable around 2 weeks. So, but very similar to you, kind of like 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out, I'm still doing a 20-mile long run.
Yep.
And then I might just do like 30K 2 weeks out. And then 1 week out, I do about 20K.
About 20, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like one of a smart approach. And I hear this time and time again, sort of like 20K half marathon the week before.
Yeah.
You're well trained. It should feel relatively easy. Usually it's just a straight, like easy run. You don't throw it. Did you throw any spice into your long run at all?
A few, just a couple kilometers here and there of marathon pace, just to kind of get the legs moving, speed it up, feel the pace. But not a lot, not a large, just a couple kilometers, maybe like 6 or 8 altogether. I think 6. Yeah, so it was a pretty small percentage, maybe like a little over 25%.
Okay, so race week, and this is what wonderful timing, because you've just gone through most of this.
Yeah.
And the week leading up, you still do a workout on race week? You still throw in something like a kind of a lighter workout maybe?
Yeah. Tuesday I did do a little bit of marathon pace. So like zone 2 stuff. I did marathon pace. And then today I just went out and did 8K with some strides. Maybe like every 5 minutes I did about a 20-second stride. Nothing too strenuous. I felt really good, and I don't want to push it. But I think the taper was good enough for me to kind of get back down to baseline. As always, I think for all of us racers out there, like you always think, am I going to recover? Because I was feeling heavy legs up until today, I feel. Now today I felt pretty good. So you just have to trust the process. The taper works, but man, it was stressing me out.
Oh, so you like the taper madness is real for you. It's like, it's something that hits you race week. You're kind of like climbing the walls. You're like, why do my legs feel this way?
Yep. This hurts, that hurts. If I drop my volume so much, why do I still feel this way? I'm tired, I'm fatigued. Am I eating enough? Oh yeah. I mean, even with all the experience, I would like to say, oh no, I'm super confident. I feel amazing. I'm ready to go. But to be honest, I think I have, the pre-race anxiety. Now, if I were going into a trail race, I'd probably be fine. But going into this marathon, I just am putting the pressure on myself to have a great race. So it's, I'm feeling
it's like
it, but I feel good.
One of the tricky things about road running and about the marathon in particular, because it's very like exact and measured, and you're motivated by and going in with a specific time goal or like a big number, like sub this or sub that, right? It's just everything is on a much more fine, sharp edge. So race week, when do you start carb loading?
Yeah, I do the acute carb load thing, just a couple of days. I don't really like to do, I think it's kind of falling out of fashion to do, the week carb load, the 6-day, the 5-day carb load.
Yeah.
I've always kind of done, just a few days. And I think now I'm going to more focus on it, like the 3 days out, just kind of change some of my protein and fat for some carbs instead of like adding a lot of extra, because I also, you want to be so careful about not overdoing it and overeating and, retaining a lot of fluid and all that kind of stuff from the extra carbs. So I'm going to kind of switch out and kind of focus more on carbs, take out the fiber, anything that could, kind of mess with my stomach a few days out. And then the 48 hours, 36 hours out, think about like adding, just a few more carbs, a few more portions of carbs in for those couple of days, a little more hydration, electrolytes, that kind of stuff. But I also don't want to overdo it. I have a very funny photo. I should have pulled it up for this podcast, but I didn't think about it. I have a very funny photo of me running a 100K race here in Costa Rica. It's super humid and hot where this race was, out by the beach. And I decided to drink just a ton of electrolytes and water the 3 days leading up. And literally I'm smiling in a photo and my eyes, like one cheek is just like completely puffed. Like the cheeks are puffed up, like the eyes are closed. I absolutely overdid it. I must have weighed like 5 pounds more.
Which is super dangerous, right? Like hyponatremia is real, right? It's a very dangerous thing. Yeah.
It is, and I didn't feel bad. I think maybe I had enough salt and that sort of stuff, the electrolytes and the sodium and all that as well, but I just overdid it. And that was a long time ago. That was like 8 years ago. So ever since then, I'm very careful about just like, making sure I'm well hydrated, not like adding in this ton of other stuff, just kind of focusing on it instead of overdoing it or underdoing it. So.
Yeah, the carb load is both, I think, essential and a very real thing that has a deep and profound positive impact on your performance on race day. But it's also something that is very tricky to pull off because you can definitely overdo it. You can definitely like throw yourself off, right? Like gorging on bagels and
yum
cookies and nibs and M&Ms and whatever the heck else you like enjoy.
That's my weakness, cookies.
yeah. And just you've got license to eat as many damn cookies as you can fit in your mouth, right? And that can really throw things off.
Yep.
Although there is like a metric, I believe it's 8 grams of carbs per kilogram of weight of your body weight. That's like the stat line you need to go by when you're trying to carb load for a couple of days before the race. And actually hitting that number is really hard. It's like, it's pretty intense. It's a really weird feeling. And like I always say to someone who's new to marathoning, like if you're doing it right, you're going to look at that bag of M&Ms by like Saturday midday and you're just going to be like, I hate M&Ms. Yep. I never want to eat M&Ms again. And if you're getting that emotional response, you're doing it right. But you shouldn't be like, your stomach shouldn't be flipping and you shouldn't be wrecked. Right. It's again, a fine line. Okay. So
there's a fine line. Yep.
When you shut the carb load down, like Saturday at some point, like midday or Saturday night after
Saturday night, I'll eat a very early dinner and I'll eat pasta. But again, I watch the portions. I really don't overdo it. I just kind of probably get myself, well fed. I don't mix in any protein or other stuff or vegetables or anything like that. And I know that there are some nutrition coaches and nutritionists who do keep the protein in. I don't. I just take out anything that I think might mess with my digestion or stomach at all. And I just do like the pure, simple carbs, pasta, like, pasta dinner the night before and my bagel and honey the 3 hours before the race, and then bring, like a gel along or a waffle, one of those like honey stinger waffles. Yum. Another great excuse to eat sweets. Mm-hmm. Kind of like on the bus ride over to the start line. That's my plan. So my stomach's not so empty. And then, I'll do the gels during. And that's another one, another topic for another day is also like the in-race fueling. I feel like people tend to, the ideal or the equation to figure out your carbs, if you think about carbs, you should have 1 carb per kilo per hour of racing. That's also really hard for some people, to stomach. And so it just really on a person-to-person basis, I feel those equations help a lot to get a ballpark. And then you just kind of go, figuring it out as you go along to see what works for you.
I got a hot take about that, but I'll leave it for a second when we get into the race. Okay. And I understand that I'm kind of the exception to the rule here, but I'll unpack it for you and get your reaction. So yeah, in terms of just like planning, like you strike me as an A-type person. We've worked together for a while. You're very organized. You're an editor. You're a good, you're a good sort of behind the scenes editor. You're very accurate with everything. Are you like a checklist person? Are you a lay all the kit out the night before and make the big plan person? Do you have like goals written down, ABC goals? Like, how do you approach all of the organizing of marathon day?
Okay. Well, yes, yes, and yes. And those are all great. Yes. The checklist I've had written for a week, like my new checklist for this race, but I also have checklists that I send out to my athletes, like if they need help planning for a race and all of that. But yeah, checklist, absolutely. I'll use it tonight when I pack, because I'm flying out tomorrow. And okay, laying out all of the, like my uniform and the bib and all that stuff, I do it, but I don't take a photo of it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The flat lay.
The flat lay. I do lay everything out, of course, because tomorrow I need to be at the bus, at the buses, because we have to bus in to the start line. It's a point-to-point course. And so we have to bus into the start line, and we have to be at where the buses take off from between 3:15 and 4:15. So my stuff is going to be all ready, out to go. So I just wake up, eat, and then can go and get ready right away. I am very organized. Like, I don't like running around at the last minute trying to find something and, take off without my headphones or without, something like that. So yes, my things will be laid out and ready to go in the morning.
So you're not buying a new pair of shoes the day before at the expo. That's for
Absolutely
damn sure.
Not. I might, but I won't use them in the race.
Yes, there you go. You might, if you find a good deal.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. So race day itself, like, I think the mental, emotional element of racing is underexplored. It's something that I've talked to quite a few runners about over the years. It's something I think about a lot, which is like how you mentally prepare for this like really big challenge. And I don't care how well prepared you are physically for a marathon. The place your mind and your heart goes in the last 10K of a marathon, it can be, wow. Yeah. Yep. So like, how do you prepare for that, like that last 10K of a marathon? Like, what's your approach?
Yeah, I know that it might sound kind of cheesy, but it works for me. And, doing a lot of ultras and really long races, I actually go through a lot of those ups and downs. It's not just like the last 10K, it could happen in kilometer 40, then again in kilometer 60, then again in kilometer 75. And so you're always trying to like fight against your mind. So I just start thinking about the finish line. If I have someone who's going to be at the finish line waiting to see people, I often think about my other athletes who are sharing the race with me and think about like how they're doing and try to get motivated and inspired by, this is their first marathon or this is their first race, or, trying to think about, I wonder how this person's doing and how that person's doing. And I try to smile, which I know, there's all those studies about like, okay, if you smile, maybe you'll feel happier. And, I sing a little bit. I do a bunch of cheesy things, but to me, that's what works. And so, I just kind of take it in stride that way. And I also really think about what I'm going to eat and drink when I'm done. Like, that is a huge inspiration to me. And I don't know if that's, nutritionists are probably like rolling their eyes at me, but that's literally what I think. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to taste so delicious when I finish the race.
Oh, you get like hunger fantasies, like, with a few kilometers to go. You're like, yes, I would like to. Yeah. Which sort of pizza? Which place am I going to go to? Yeah. And
the worst thing about it is that usually, you know how it is when you finish those races, especially I know the road marathon, my stomach's going to be, a mess from pounding, and I'm going to finish and I'm not going to want to eat. And then it's going to be like until the following day's dinner where I'm actually going to be able to enjoy the food the way that I want to. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away the illusion, like that I will be able to enjoy that meal.
One of the great sort of torturous, ironic, cruel moments in running for me is when you cross the finish line, usually at big American races, but it's a lot of races, a lot of marathons around the world now do this, where they've got like a beer sponsor. In Chicago, I ran a really hard marathon in Chicago in 2022 across the finish line. And then they're just like, here's this Goose Island IPA, and I'm just like, that looks awesome. And then I grab it and like I'm super dehydrated. It's
Yeah.
a sunny day. It's starting to get warm outside. Just finished a marathon. I should be celebrating. They hand me like, they give me 2 beers. I've got one in each
Ice
hand. And I'm
cold.
like, this is great. They're ice cold. Just pulled off the tap. And I'm like, oh, amazing. And then I go to sit down. I can barely sit because my legs start freezing up. And then it's just like stomach completely closes. And it's just like not a frigging chance you're putting that in your body right now, pal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super weird that they do that. But I understand the idea behind it, but the actuality doesn't sort of meet the moment. It's, yeah. I need like a couple hours until I can.
Until you can
into a
stomach it.
beverage.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
So you're going to New Hampshire.
Yep.
Live free or die. And you're going to run a point to point.
Yeah.
It's a nosebleed. It's a downhill.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
You train for the downhills?
I did. Did a couple of long runs here. Started point to point, ran downhill, and it was a little tough on the quads, but I kind of thank the trails for that. I kind of thank like the downhill training, doing all the trail running that I do, and lots of hours in the gym. So I'm hoping that they will hold up. My quads will hold up for me during this.
I hope they do as well.
Yeah, please.
Are you wearing? Do you wear super shoes? Are you a super shoe person?
I have. Okay, this is my first race with super shoes. I'm very excited.
Boy.
Yes, I did. I got the Nike Vaporflies, and I love them.
You've done a couple runs?
Yeah, I did 2 of my long runs, and I said, okay, can't do any more because these shoes do not have a very long shelf life. Save them. So I did 2 long runs. Love them. Absolutely love them. So I am good. This is going to be my first race with super shoes. So I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah. One thing I've noticed, and I think this has been talked about endlessly, so I'm not breaking any news here, but like they really do help with recovery. Like pre-super shoes, road marathons really would just absolutely bash my legs. Post-super shoes, they still bash my legs, but the recovery times I notice are a little bit quicker.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which do you
found
use?
the last super shoe I ran in was always the Nikes, the Nike Vaporfly, whatever.
Oh,
so
okay. Me too.
yeah, same shoe that you've got.
Okay.
I had the Vaporfly 2. You've got the 3rd iteration, probably the new one, if that's what you've gone with.
I think so, yeah.
Although I'm like I'm an Adidas guy too, so I'm curious about the Adidas super shoe. So I mean, we'll nerd out about super shoes in another podcast. But
because I also want to try the A6 one that Alex just reviewed. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
that looks phenomenal.
Time. Yes. I'm totally into trying those out. Yeah.
There may be a pair of those in my house. I don't own them. They're my wife's. But,
so
she
cool.
she had positive things to say about them.
Okay.
So I'm
good
curious
to know.
about them as well.
Yeah, we got to try them out.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so last thing, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Oh boy.
Because if you say it, then you got to follow through with it.
Oh God.
What's the goal? What's the plan? Give me a number.
No.
Don't chicken out on me here. Give me a number.
Okay. I'm going to give you the number that I have been training for.
Okay.
But I don't know what's going to happen. And anyway, I'm just going to give it to you. I've been training for a 306. I've been training for it. The thing is, I'm a very positive person. I'm not being negative. I'm being realistic. It's been very hard. It's been very hard. I don't know. But also, here in Costa Rica, I don't know what has been going on these past 2 months, but the wind has been out of control. So I don't know if I hit wind in New Hampshire, it'll be the same. But the wind has been just so hard. I feel like running my marathon pace is like running faster than threshold. Like it's been hard. So I'm being very, very realistic. And I'm saying, yes, I'm going to push for that 306 because I want it. I've been training so hard. But I would be happy, I would be happy with the 310. I would be happy. Anything that's going to beat my old PR, I would be very happy. I know this is an aggressive goal for me, but I'm going to go in there and give it my all and do my best. And, if I can't, I'll be happy. I got A, B, and C. So I think that's the important thing.
Brilliant move. Yeah. Always have a backup because when things go sideways, you can, instead of having no plan, you've got another plan.
Yeah. Could be anything. It could be anything. Could be the weather. I mean, if it's going to be windy and rainy and freezing cold as the forecast says, I kind of have to take that into account too. And it might not be the best conditions. I'm running in, 75 degrees every day here, sunny, more humid than it is up there right now. So that's kind of something against me and a lot of wind. So the conditions are going to be very different. And as you know, each race, a race is a race. You never know how you're going to wake up that day, but I'm going to give it my best. That's for sure.
I can't wait for next week's pod to hear the race report from New Hampshire.
I'm excited.
All right. Okay. Well, good luck, Katelyn.
Thank you.
We'll leave it on that this week, and make sure to follow us on socials and sign up for our newsletter. We've got a newsletter that we pump out 3 times a week, and all kinds of good stuff in there. And check out our YouTube channel as well. We're posting weekly shoe reviews, and we're about to start posting a whole lot of other interesting content there as well. So, thanks for listening, and until next time.
Thanks.